And Pogba leaves for McTominay! Magnificent! It's Moraes, he's done it again! He has fizzed that into the bottom corner. Vardy for Chowdhury. And set for Madison! He is one bright young thing! Alisson saw Salah running from his own half, so onside here, Mo Salah. Salah to settle it! In front of the Kop! There's no feeling like that feeling! And now you've got to believe them. You have got to believe them.
Hey guys, welcome to the 9th episode of the 3PL podcast. A massive thank you to everyone who takes some time out of their week to listen to our podcast. We really appreciate it. This week we're missing our resident West Ham fan. We've replaced him with a fan of a club outside the Premier League, a Brentford fan, so maybe he can bring some neutral viewpoints to some of these games. Anyway, we're going to start at Molineux with Wolves Palace, the first game of the game week. And yeah, it was a good win for Wolves in the end. They looked pretty comfortable for a change. They scored in the first half for a change. And they managed to get a result without relying too much on Raul Jimenez, which is, nice for Wolves to not have to play around him every game. And they scored some really good goals in this game, and they fully deserved their win, in my opinion.
Podence really stepped up to the mark this week. He was brilliant all across the pitch. Everything which seemed to be good about Wolves' play seemed to come straight through him. So he was very influential throughout the match, making it a very comfortable win for them. Palace, on the other hand, looked pretty poor. If Zaha's not on song, then you just don't know where it's going to come from. You don't see anyone else in that team really bringing much. Occasionally Townsend can pop up with a screamer, like that one which I think we all remember against Man City either a season or two ago. But on the rest, Wolves dominated. They're starting to find form. I think they're getting their formation going now. I think they're all starting to learn, the new players who've come into that side. So yeah, things are on the up for them.
Yeah, definitely. And another highlight for them is that Nouri, I believe his name is, scored on his debut at left back. I thought it was a really impressive game from him. He'd stepped into the team at 19 years old and looked really comfortable. So all their signings this summer have looked great. And, if they all come good this season, I think, Wolves will be pushing for that Champions League spot again.
The only thing which would make me slightly worried for Wolves is, are they going to start worrying about holding on to Traore? Because surely he's going to be thinking, if I'm not starting every game, he's got to be thinking about other teams. And especially there's big teams who've been looking at him. He's getting to the Spanish squad and last game started for them. He must be wanting bigger and better things.
Yeah, true. I think Wolves have found a way to play that don't rely on him too heavily. Last season, he was obviously a very big part of their team, but this year they've managed to find a formation that suits them. He doesn't really fit in at the moment. So, yeah, I guess Wolves maybe come January might cash in on him and then maybe bring in some more Portuguese talent instead. Right, moving on to the second game, Sheffield United, Man City. A game that went largely to plan for Man City. What we expected from Sheffield United as well, just a very abject performance with not much cutting edge. They brought in Brewster, but did he really provide much? I'm not really sure he did. And he was up there with McBurney, and you would think those two together would provide a good partnership, if not cause some troubles to, a somewhat ropey Man City defence this season. But Man City dealt with it okay. They prevented Sheffield United from having any good chances, really. Just one shot on target in the whole game from Sheffield United. And yeah, I guess one goal from Kyle Walker was enough to settle it in the end.
Yeah, another win for City. Still not at their flowing best. They're not the Man City we know and I say love, but very debatably. They're not playing the style of football which we're used to. Obviously, they don't have the front man of Aguero there. So Torres, I thought he looked pretty good, cutting through the lines. Sheffield United, though, on the other hand, I found unbelievably frustrating watching this game. Time and time again, especially down the right wing, they had the opportunity to get that ball into the box. The last 30 minutes of the game, that if they could get the ball in, they'd get a goal. It was there to be had. City, they'd stopped really offering much going forward. I just don't understand. You've got a big striker in McBurney. Throw the ball in. Even if it pops up, you've got Brewster, who's shown himself while I was playing for Swansea to be a bit of a goal poacher. So just don't understand their thinking. They were overplaying it.
Yeah, one shining light for Sheffield United, I guess, was a good performance from Ramsdale. Again, I think he looks like one of the best players for them this season. I think when your goalkeeper's your best player in, game out, you've got to be a bit worried about that. But he stops the scoreline from being very one-sided. And if anything, he prevented Ferran Torres from getting his first goal in a Man City shirt in the Premier League, at least, because he had some great chances in the first half and he was playing in that lone role where Aguero and Jesus would usually play. But, he found himself in good positions and just couldn't quite finish it off. So credit to Ramsdale. But yeah, like you said, Sheffield United just lacking any kind of ambition to go forward, and they deserve to lose this game, unfortunately.
And from one team which is struggling to get quite into their flow, into another team which at times have looked terrific this season, we've got Chelsea against Burnley, and Chelsea, the team who can tear people apart. And it was 3-0 to Chelsea this week, and goals from Werner, Zuma and Ziyech. So all around, very happy days for the Chelsea fans.
So yeah, I think Chelsea, probably that was one of their most comprehensive performances of the season. Finally, our defence looks like it's gelling well. Thiago Silva, he didn't have a great Premier League debut with a mistake. I think now he's getting used to Premier League, the players around him. I thought he put in a great performance. Mendy is brilliant. Probably, I think he is probably the better signing that we've made. He's impressed me more than Havertz has. And, he can make the saves that Kepa probably would have let in. His shot-stopping ability is a lot better. I think he'll help Chelsea earn the 3 points where previously we might have conceded late on and got a draw. So I definitely can see Chelsea getting more points with Mendy playing. It'll be interesting to see where Kante fits into Frank's long-term plans. I think his time might be limited because we're pretty stacked in the midfield. Hudson-Odoi not playing, Pulisic's not playing, Kovacic as well. It's a shame because I think Kante is a great asset to the team. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much time he'll get in the season.
Yeah, it was a much better performance from Chelsea. I thought the cutting edge that had been previously lacking in earlier weeks really came through in this game, and that was without Pulisic. Ziyech looks like a really apt signing, great finisher, just really good in the build-up play as well. And then you look at the other players who scored the goals, like Werner, he was always going to get goals and he was clinical in this game. And then players like Zuma popping up with a goal, the players you won't really expect to get the goals. So all in all, very impressive performance from Chelsea and a big 3 points and a big clean sheet, another one for Mendy. On the other side of things, Burnley, again, looking very, very poor. They had a really good early chance, actually, through Ashley Barnes in one-on-one with Mendy, but then he just couldn't put the correct weight on the lobbed shot to get it over the keeper and under the bar, so it went flying into the stadium. But these are the big chances where games can turn, and if you go 1-0 up against Chelsea at home, I think Burnley are one of those teams who are well set up to defend that, but they didn't get that goal to go ahead, and after that Chelsea just took them apart in the second half.
Yeah, the finish by Barnes it's almost what you expect from a Burnley player, just lacked that finesse. It's just the finesse which they don't have throughout the whole team. They're still a very workmanlike team, and it's catching them out this season. Most of the teams in the Premier League have upped their game. They're playing a better style of football. We're seeing more goals throughout the whole league. And I think Burnley, who are a team which don't really suit that style of football, are getting caught out left, right and centre. And Chelsea took them apart at times this game. And like Alex said, Mendy is definitely going to be the game changer, I think, for Chelsea. We saw early on in the season, Kepa, not only is he making mistakes, I think that must make the defence more on edge, more anxious, and they must be worried about how, if they make a mistake, the goal's going to go in every time. And I think having someone like Mendy will not only make the goalkeeper more solid, but also the defence, because they've got confidence in, if they do make a mistake, he will be there to bail them out.
Yeah, arguably Chelsea's best signing this summer. Kind of put Havertz in the shadow a little bit. Right, moving on to Liverpool-West Ham, the game on Saturday evening. And again, it was a very un-Liverpool-like performance. It was a struggle for them at times. They didn't quite, get going at any point. Yes, they got the win, but we're used to seeing Liverpool win in a certain way, scoring, really good goals, playing attractive football. But without those key players in their team that they're missing at the moment, especially Van Dijk, they look very un-Liverpool-like. And West Ham almost got something at Anfield, which is, almost unheard of. But they took the lead in this game. Fornals got a really good goal from actually a pretty poor bit of defending. I thought Gomez just headed it right to Fornals and Fornals put it away. But then, like Liverpool did last week against Sheffield United, they rallied, won a penalty, and then that man again, Jota, gets the winning goal late in the second half.
Yeah, I think one of the big differences this season on last one about Liverpool is that neither wing-back have really got up their game to what they were last season. Both Trent and Robertson, although looking at times dangerous, nowhere near on the level they were last season. Their assists aren't coming from out wide, which, because of that, doesn't open up the spaces for the front three to really get into their flow and create chances left, right and centre. So it's they have been struggling. And the other big one for me is Firmino. He's been poor, not only this season, I think for the last 6 to 12 months, he's been a shadow of his former self. Liverpool fans always talk about how he links up play, how he's more of a playmaker than a goal scorer, but this season he doesn't even seem to be doing that. He's just like a spare player this season. He's on the pitch, but he doesn't seem to be having any effect going forward or even going backwards. He doesn't even seem to be pressing the same intensity as he was previously. On the other hand, when Jota's come on, he is showing himself to be really effective. And I wonder what you guys think about if he's actually going to be long term this season, going to be the player who should be playing through the middle for Liverpool, because so far he's looked considerably better than Firmino, I'd say, and his finishing's been top notch.
I do think Jota is, I'd say he's an upgrade to Firmino, really, from what I saw when he was playing for Wolves. His goal scoring ability is better. Maybe Firmino, you could argue, is maybe a bit more consistent with the performances he puts in, but I think Jota's probably more skillful as a player. And also, we can't forget Shaqiri, who threaded the pass. I still think he is a good player to have to bring on because he had the vision to find that pass. They were struggling and you could see West Ham grinding it out. But yeah, Shaqiri, he's important to the setup as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think what people forget about Liverpool is their strength and depth. Yes, they're being exposed a little bit at the moment without Van Dijk and having to play some very young players at centre-back like Phillips, who came in this game. But, that squad depth is huge, and that's kind of why they won the league last year, having those players to fall back on week in, week out when your players aren't performing like Firmino hasn't been this year. You've got Shota coming off the bench and scoring goals. I think that is kind of a quality that you need to have if you're going to win the league. Yeah, I guess it's a shame for West Ham that Antonio couldn't play in this game because I think they rely heavily, like we've said previously, on him to, go forward and cause troubles to the defence. But without him, Liverpool dealt with most of the threats that West Ham came to them with. And yeah, ultimately Jota came on and got that goal from that really, really nice assist from Shaqiri. And that's 2 weeks in a row now where Liverpool have just about managed to get the win when they've been one down at home. So that championship mentality, I guess, just by not losing games and keeping the pressure on throughout the game, it just about gets them the win this time.
You bring up Phillips. I just wanted to say how I think he played really well for his Premier League debut. Almost a man of the match performance, to be honest, because he was really commanding the back line really well. And there's a lot made out of Van Dijk not being in the team due to his injury. But if Phillips can continue to put on these performances week in, week out, if he does play, then I don't think it's not such a major problem because I thought he was brilliant on his debut.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Alex. I think the bigger injury worry was Alisson when he was out. I think Alisson has come back in, has made that defence look a lot more solid. And I think Phillips against West Ham looked terrific at times. Haller's no easy player to play against. He's a big, powerful striker. And he had him in his pocket. It was very comfortable for him. And apart from their early goal, I thought Liverpool looked pretty comfortable at the back, just not very creative going forwards until Shaqiri came on, who, like you both said, he definitely was a bit of the game changer, Shaqiri and Jota, and that is that strength and depth which Matt was talking about.
One thing I do want to bring up with West Ham, David Moyes. I doubt his management expertise in the way that he left Benrahma on the bench until the 89th minute. Great time to bring on Benrahma with a few minutes to go to try and get something from the game. I don't think so. He should have been on from the start. If there's any time to get out the Liverpool defence with their new setup, I mean, granted, yeah, we've just said how they put in a really good performance, but if there's one time when you attack Liverpool, it's when they got this new defensive setup and try and get at them. And Benrahma was running circles around defenders all the time in the Championship. And, the Premier League's not a massive step up. He can still do it in the Premiership, no doubt, even against the top six teams. Really missed the trick there. I don't know what he was thinking.
Yeah, you could definitely make the argument that Benrahma should have come on a bit earlier. I think Bowen and Fornal was both kind of tired as the game went on. And, it's exactly the same thing that was probably happened to the Liverpool defenders, but they didn't bring on Benrahma early enough to exploit that kind of fatigue. So, yeah, I guess that's another big talking point and probably helped Liverpool win this game.
Yeah, just to echo your point, even 20 minutes at the end, would be better than 2. You know, it's just ridiculous.
I guess the argument on that one was that until the 85th minute, it was still 1-1. And like you say, he's an attacking player. He's not a defensive-minded player. So I think at that point, Moyes was happy to hold on to the point against the defending champions rather than put at risk a player, which I think he's just coming back from injury, isn't he? But I do see your point. He deserves more minutes than the last couple at the end of the game. He's not going to have any chance to have a proper effect.
Thankfully for Alex and his Ben Rama fan club, I think Ben Rama will start to get games as the season continues. I think he's too good not to play minutes, so surely within the next couple of games he'll feature in the first team. Right, moving on to Sunday and Aston Villa Southampton, and what a game this was. We all came into it as Southampton fans kind of hoping for a win because of what it would do to our league standing and our momentum. And this first half was probably the best one I've ever seen from Southampton. We looked a million miles apart from last season. You know, we had a goal ruled out really early on, borderline offside, VAR decision ruled it out, and then minutes after that, Vestergaard gets the opener, and then we score 2 absolutely amazing free kicks from James Ward-Prowse. And at half-time, you're 3-0 up, and you think it's going to be a pretty comfortable game. But yes, we scored one more in the second half through Danny Ings, but then Aston Villa really came back into the game late on with 3 goals after 60 minutes. And in the end, I think we were pretty lucky to hang on, but we'll definitely take the win in that one.
Yeah, there's some brilliant performances out on the pitch during that game. James Ward-Prowse being the highlight for me. What a fantastic performance. It's levels I didn't even think he could really reach, to be perfectly honest. The free kicks, like you said, 2 of the best free kicks I've seen in a long, long time. He couldn't have got the ball, gone and put it into the net in a better position himself if he was using his hands. It was incredible, especially the second one, which is just into the side net and so much whip on it. It was just sensational. When you watch the replays of it, which I've now done about 1 million times, every time he puts a ball down for that, both free kicks, it's exactly the same. He's so structured in the way he's going to take that free kick. He's so practiced. You can tell he puts in the hours on the training field, getting those free kicks just to that point where you're comfortable when he's in that position that he's probably going to score. Its goal percentage from free kicks is now up to, I think it's 1 in 10. It's like 11%, which is the highest since 2003 out of any player. He's just taken his game to another level, and it's what it's like to see as a Saints fan, because for a long time we were worried that he was not going to reach this level. It was always going to be talent before actual product.
Yeah, I remember when Hasenhüttl came in, we were all worried that James Ward-Prowse might be the one that falls out of the team. And because he was so talented in this dead ball situation, he was one of those players you can't really take out of our team. But Hasenhüttl has changed the way he plays completely. He's now a lot more aggressive. He puts in more yards. Definitely the hardest worker on the team that we have. And yeah, what he's added to his game in such a short amount of time is pretty incredible. And yeah, this performance really summed it up. 2 really great goals, an assist. And yeah, rightfully our captain. I think he's the best player we have right now. And it was a really nice goal as well from Danny Ings. Unfortunately, he picked up it looked like a bad injury, but it's since been confirmed that it doesn't seem quite as bad as first thought. So fortunately, that wasn't terrible because he's got a very bad track record of injuries. And then after Danny Ings went off injured, we kind of fell apart a little bit. Let Aston Villa back in the game. Mings got a header, and then Watkins scored a penalty. And then when Grealish scored, 96 minutes into the game, you kind of thought, God, if it doesn't end soon, we're going to concede another one. Fortunately, the ref blew the whistle and we managed to get the 3 points. But I think had this game gone on for an extra 10 minutes, we were on the ropes.
Losing Bednarak to, I believe, concussion made a massive change at the back. I think Stevens came on. He's just, this whole season so far, he's not looked up to speed yet. Yannick, on the other hand, has looked fantastic. And I think it was a bit of a shame for him to have had a good performance and then for his team to concede 3 goals. McCarthy did some really good saves throughout the game, but then his positioning looked dodgy for a couple of the goals. I'm still not 100% confident with him when I see him between the sticks. I think he's a high-level championship goalkeeper. I don't think he's really a premiership goalkeeper. But sadly, that's the position we're in at the moment, and it's not going to change until at least January. Just a miracle that Danny Ings' injuries seemingly isn't too bad. We're still waiting for absolute confirmation on what exactly it is. But the scans so far have shown no long-term injury, so that's really good news.
Yeah, we've always got Fraser Forster to fall back on if all goes tits up, but I think we all think we've seen the back of him in a Southampton shirt for now, at least. The other team that started the Premier League season really well up until now were Everton. They played Newcastle this weekend, and for the second week in a row, I was left a bit surprised because they don't look half the team they were in the first couple of weeks. Yes, they're missing good players like Richarlison and James Rodriguez, but all in all, like without those players in this game and the game against Southampton last weekend, they just looked really, really bad. They dropped Pickford for this game. Not sure why. I think it was strategical, but didn't seem to make a difference. Olsen comes in and they still concede 2 goals. Yes, Newcastle played well at times, but I think this is much more about how bad Everton were over the whole 90 minutes. And yes, Calvert-Lewin got a late consolation, but Newcastle thoroughly deserved their win, in my opinion.
Yeah, when I looked at that lineup of Everton's, I thought this is looking considerably weaker than what we've seen so far in the season. And early doors, I almost got carried away with the form Everton was showing. And I thought they had a stronger squad depth than they have. I think the injuries and the red cards they've had so far have really hit them hard. They're now lacking any pace up front. Calvert-Lewin, brilliant in the air, but he's not going to be running into those channels really creating anything like Richarlison can for him. So it's stifled their attack. They had a lot of possession this game, but they couldn't do anything with it. Whereas on the other hand, Newcastle, again, showing they're that team which are a bit of a yo-yo side. You don't know what you're going to get each week. This week they were more on the up, and it was a better game from them, and they got their result. Hopefully next week it will be the opposite, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, I think you've just highlighted the fact just how important Richarlison and Rodriguez is to the Everton setup. It's like someone's flipped a switch and their form's just dipped. It'll be interesting to see what Ancelotti does now to try and get some, personality back into Everton and get some more points on the board.
Yeah, definitely. Fair play to Newcastle on this one. Wilson looked dangerous the whole way through, and actually it's nice to see Fraser and Wilson combining for a goal, just like their Bournemouth days for the last goal. Yeah, really good apt signings, I guess, for Newcastle, and they're finally coming good. And we mentioned it in the summer how impressed we were with their recruitment, and it's starting to pay dividends now because they're winning games that last season you could probably say they weren't going to win. So fair play to Steve Bruce and Mike Ashley for actually backing him for a change. Right, moving on to United Arsenal, a game that we hyped up a lot before this weekend. Well, I did anyway. And then Angus and Peter seemed to suggest this was going to be a very boring game, and it kind of played out that way, to be honest, unfortunately for my prediction. But yeah, I mean, a 1-0 Arsenal win. And what did United do in this game? Like, I really can't remember, honestly. It was just one of the worst performances I've seen, again, from United. At this point, like, they just aren't worth watching. I wonder if United fans even watch their team at the moment, because they are dreadful. Yeah, Arsenal got the win, and a massive win for them. The first win against a top 6 team since 2015. And, Arteta's really changing the Arsenal mentality, it seems.
I'm not sure you could give them a top 6 team at the moment, Man United. They are looking dreadful. Everything that they were doing right at the end of last season, they're doing wrong this season. Fernandes just doesn't seem to be able to really influence a game like he was last season. His passing at times was really wayward. He was giving the ball away left, right and centre. Pogba, words can't describe how bad he was at times in this game. He was lazy moving around the pitch, and his excuse for why he gave away the penalty is a disgrace. It was such lazy defending. Just stuck a leg out. You always know what's going to happen. The player's going to go down, and it's going to be a penalty. You can't do that at this level. Can't do that at any level. If you were Sunday League, that would be caught out. But when you're a Premier League centre mid, international, one of the most expensive centre mids there's ever been, you should know better than that. He says, "Oh, I'm not a defensive player." Mate, you play centre mid. It's both attacking and defensive. You can't just ignore that part of your game.
I also want to point out the Wells United's midfield. Well, you could argue the whole team were pretty poor. Thomas Partey, he was running the show from the first minute. He was the focal point. Everything seemed to go through him. And, I'm sure we'll be talking about this again later, but probably the signing of the summer for the whole Premier League, to be honest. He's that good. He'd be in the starting lineup for all the teams. Just very impressive. I think Arsenal are a real force now, and I think they will get top 4. He just nullified all of Man United's attacks pretty much.
I think I read that he averages 41 passes per game at the moment. In the 2 games that he's played for Arsenal, he's averaging 40 passes per game. So you can tell already that he's integral in the middle of the pitch for them, picking up the ball, spraying it across, just pacing out the game really well. And I think the one thing that Man United struggled with was breaking down Arsenal, and that stability now they have in the middle, where in previous seasons they've been maybe they've been exploited in that area. Partey now with El Neni as well, who's a very defensive-minded centre mid. they're just quite a difficult team to break down. So yeah, I think a lot of positive signs coming out from Arsenal, and the fact that they got a win, maybe not against a top 6 team anymore, but a win away at Old Trafford, regardless of what team United are playing or how they're playing, is a good result in my opinion.
At the risk of the wrath of the Arsenal fans, I still don't think they were that good either in this game. I thought Partey, like you said, I thought he was brilliant in the middle of the park, but Arsenal weren't that creative going forwards. They didn't look that interesting either. It was a pretty dull game settled by a penalty. I think both teams, I can't see either team getting to the top 4 this season. I think Arsenal got the better chance out of the two. Yes, they're grittier, but not for me.
Right, next up we had Spurs taking on Brighton. A comfortable win in the end for Spurs, but at times it was quite difficult. I thought Brighton made their lives tough, especially in the second half. But yeah, it was interesting because Brighton started this game without 2 of their key players, really. Maupay dropped from the side, and also Matt Ryan in goal, who I think had an injury in this game. Those 2 absences made a huge difference to Brighton, in my opinion. Without that spearhead through the middle, that is Maupay, they looked very ineffective up front and didn't really look like troubling Tottenham too often. Harry Kane gets the first half penalty, but then after that, they let Brighton back in the game, just like they let other teams back in the game, like we've seen this season against West Ham especially. And after Lamptey gets his equaliser in the second half, I kind of thought Brighton might have pushed on to try and win the game, but they seemed quite content to sit back and take a point, and then they were punished when the quality of Gareth Bale comes off the bench and heads in the winner. So all in all, a bit of a disappointing game in many respects from both sides, but Tottenham will be the happier of the two, getting the win in a game they probably didn't deserve to.
Yeah, it was a much worse performance by Spurs than I was expecting. I thought, as my prediction was, I thought they were going to tear Brighton apart. So well done to Brighton. They were solid throughout the game. They managed to stifle that incredible attack on the whole of Spurs. Obviously, we still got a goal from 2 out of the 3, of Kane and Bale, but it was a solid performance by Spurs. They got the result they needed. Moving forwards, you'd expect them they're going to have to raise their game again, back to the levels which we have seen throughout the season. Obviously, that defence is still a bit shaky, and still at times they got opened up a little bit too easily, especially for that Lamptey goal. You'd expect better. As the season goes on, Brighton, they still got a lot to be hopeful for. They're performing well throughout. They've, in no game this season of what I've watched by Brighton, if they looked poor or not at the races, they've always had some say in each game they played in. So fair play to Potter. I think he'll quite comfortably keep them up this season.
Yeah, one thing to say as well, I read after the game that Maupay was dropped from the Brighton team for having an inflated ego. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's just speculation at this point. But to have a player in your team who thinks he's better than everyone else, I think that's at least the impression that we're all getting at this point. Must be very problematic for Potter. And the fact that he dropped him, it must say that it's a much bigger issue than meets the eye. And yeah, maybe that's something that will concern Brighton fans because he's the one that gets most of the goals for them. And also touching on Tottenham, they actually made 9 changes from their midweek game in the Champions League, which they lost to Royal Antwerp, which I don't think anyone saw coming. But yeah, a massive 9 changes, and then Dele Alli gets dropped from the squad entirely. So there's a lot of fluctuating lineups going on at Tottenham, and I think they're yet to find their 11 who are going to play week in, week out. Because at the moment, they're changing and chopping and changing so much that I don't think even Spurs fans know who's going to be playing at the weekend.
I think the biggest issue for Spurs is on the horizon. We could have a bit of a mutiny amongst the players in that squad, because players like Dele Alli, who up to this season has been probably quite a big influence in that dressing room, he's now getting thrown to the side by Mourinho, who's seemingly really fallen out of him. He's slating him in the media. As we've seen in the past, Jose doesn't always have the best relationship with his players. He quite often will fall out with one or two, like with Man United. Luke Shaw was probably one of the primary examples. He always seems to have one person he likes to use almost as like a whipping boy. And in this one, it's Dele Alli. And I worry that he might break down a squad which seemingly under Poch had a really good team atmosphere and we're all together. And I think that could be one of their biggest issues in terms of them winning anything this season, is that if they can't get all the players to be on song.
Yeah, Mourinho's had that effect on some of the teams he's been with in the past. Chelsea, Man United, Real Madrid, where, there's some unrest in the squad and it does impact them on the pitch. So I just think that's Mourinho, to be honest. Interesting you mention Maupay's egotistical ways and how he's been dropped. I never noticed that problem when he was at Brentford. He was, he's a regular starter for us throughout the entire season that he was with us. Perhaps his feet were more grounded with Brentford. But if that is the case, then I think Potter's made the right decision. But yeah, it's surprising to read that.
Yeah, it's funnier to me in that I remember he had a bust up with Guendouzi last season when Arsenal played Brighton, and Guendouzi got the bad press for doing almost the exact same thing, almost having an ego problem, and Malpe even called him out for it. And then 6 months later, he's being done for the same thing. So yeah, strange happenings behind the scenes at Brighton. Right, on to Monday night's games, and we had Fulham against West Brom, a game no one really expected to be good, and it wasn't great, to be honest. But the result was interesting because no one really predicted a Fulham win, and no one saw one coming for quite some time. And if anything, we thought West Brom might take advantage of Fulham in this game. But the opposite happened, really. West Brom didn't turn up, and Fulham took advantage of them. Really strong first half performance, and some really good goals as well, actually. Mitrovic was, the architect in both goals, not scoring them, but setting them up this time. And I think that was a part of the game that we hadn't really seen before. And if Fulham are going to be good this season, then they've got to rely on him for both assists and goals. So I think that was quite a positive sign for Fulham that someone else was scoring and he was setting them up. But as for West Brom, just abject again. Slaven Bilic has got a lot of explaining to do because they played great football in the Championship last year, but it's really not translated into the Premier League so far.
Yeah, Fulham really surprised me this week. Solid result against West Brom. I still don't know if they're going to be good enough to survive the whole season and get out of the relegation zone. The same with West Brom. I think both teams are two of the worst teams I've seen in the Premier League in a considerably long time. This was a 6-pointer early doors. Neither team could have afforded to lose this, and West Brom, they must be distraught. I imagine training this week is going to be very difficult for them. Losing to one of your closest rivals in the league 2-0 it's not a good sign, and they didn't really offer much at all going forwards. They barely created anything, and this is big loss. On the other hand, a really big win for Fulham, and they now need to follow it up with some decent results going onwards if they've got any chance of staying up.
Yeah, in my opinion, one of the goals of the weekend came in this game. Ola Aina had a really good strike in this game from the edge of the box, absolutely nailed it into the top corner, and it was definitely one of the better goals of the weekend. So yeah, it's nice to see that Fulham are playing better. Whether they can sustain the form for the season, probably unlikely, but at least a win so early on, especially after last weekend, we were talking about how comparable they were with Derby in their poor season in 2007. I think maybe Fulham might do a tad better on evidence of this performance, but yeah, I guess time will tell. And the last game of the game week saw Leeds take on Leicester. This one we didn't really know which way it was going to go, and I didn't really know which way it was going to go either up until half time when Leicester kind of ran away with it, to be honest. Leeds had a really good early chance through Bamford, and you think if he scores that, the game could have gone differently. Much like I said earlier with the Burnley game, if you miss these chances, you kind of get punished. And Leicester punished them really badly in this game. And Jamie Vardy, I thought, was instrumental throughout. Really good performance, ran the show start to finish. And like we said, they're kind of lost without him. He is so important to Leicester that when he doesn't play, they look a shadow of the team that we're all used to watching. And yeah, they fully deserve their win. And Leeds got a bit exposed, I think, because yes, they play good football, they press high, and they make it difficult for teams to play football. But Leicester kind of like what they did to Man City earlier in the season. They didn't really play football in the sense that they just worked off what Leeds were providing them with and kind of counterattacked them to perfection. And it was great to watch.
Yeah, it was some great tactics by Rodgers. He completely negated the effect of Leeds' press by just going long. They didn't mess about with it at the back. They didn't try and pass away for the lines. They used the pace of Vardy and Barnes on the break and just tore that Leeds defence apart at times. Vardy was instrumental throughout the whole game, like you said, and I thought a big shout out to Barnes as well. I thought he was brilliant at times. He definitely had that defence of Leeds on the half turn. They were scared. They didn't know if to go forward or backwards to him, and that just created spaces all across the pitch. Also, I thought when Under came on, he looked really dangerous. He looked like a terrific player, and I think moving on, Leicester have got some really good players still to come back into that team. Maddison's still not fit. They've got injuries at the back. And in terms of at the back, Fofana, he looks like a quality signing. What a performance. He's only 19 years old. In both games I've watched of him, he's looked brilliant. He's very capable. And at this level where teams can bully you and push you about, he seems stronger than I would have thought for a 19-year-old coming into the Premier League.
Yeah, it's very rare you see a team with 33% possession score 4 goals past their opposition, and it's almost mirrored, like I said earlier, the result they had at Man City earlier in the season, just playing on the counter attack and really punishing teams for not finishing their chances, which is what Leeds were very guilty of doing in this game.
Yeah, an absolute shocker by Bamford. Like you said, you have to be heading that down. You can't be just heading that at a comfortable height for Schmeichel. He's far too good goalkeeper to have ever made a mistake against that type of header. It was almost pathetic. He needs to also be able to do it with his head. Like, it's to be an all-round striker in the Premier League, you have to be punishing teams.
Yeah, it's one of the beauties of the Premier League. You don't know what to expect week in, week out. Bamford looked unplayable last week, but this week he didn't look like he could hit a barn door. So yeah, fingers crossed for Leeds that he doesn't make that a regular occurrence. One of the main talking points coming out of that weekend's Premier League results is that performance from Manchester United. For the second week in a row now, they've looked just abysmal. The second week in a row that they failed to score at home, and as a Man United team, that I'm used to watching, like back in the 2000s, 2006, 2007, they're just unplayable with goals flying in left, right, and centre, and yeah, they look a shadow of their former selves. And how much, I guess, do you guys think that this falls on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's head, or do you think it's the players who now just aren't playing for him anymore, and almost look resigned to Solskjaer being sacked, and someone like Pochettino coming in?
I think if I was a United fan, I'd be almost begging for Ole to be getting sacked. Even when he was performing well, I still don't see the system he plays. I don't see how he develops a team going forward. I think he's been lucky at times to have players who've hit purple patches and made him look a better manager than he is. I think he's levels below the top managers in the league. Managers like Pep, Klopp, Ancelotti, Ralph at Saints, and some of the managers like Nuno at Wolves. There's considerably better managers than him. I just don't see how he develops the team. Every week you don't know what you're going to get from them, and there's no consistency. Yeah, for me, he has to be getting sacked. The big one is Poch is sitting there. He was in the studio for the Leeds Leicester game, and just listening to him talk, it just made me think this is the man who's ready to come back to the Premier League. He's ready to make his mark, and he's ready to win stuff with a team.
Yeah, I agree that Solskjaer's obviously been very disappointing. But something I was thinking about was how they've made a perfect start in the Champions League with 2 great results against PSG and Red Bull Leipzig, I think it was. If they hadn't made a great start in the Champions League, or that they weren't playing European football and they only had the Premier League form to go by, then I think Solskjaer would have probably been gone by now, or at least the sacking would be imminent. But maybe Manchester United don't want to interrupt the rhythm in the European football at the moment, so they're off to a very good start. It's just something I was thinking about because they've got made some really great results.
Yeah, potentially their Champions League form is carrying through the job at the moment. But to me, I think the problems go way deeper than just a couple of games, perhaps fortuitous games where they got wins in the Champions League. And you've got to think, if they don't get a good result against Everton this weekend, then I think these talks of someone else coming in and Solskjaer getting sacked begin to intensify, because how long can it keep going on? At the moment, they're 16th in the Premier League, and it's kind of unheard of to see them that low down the league. And 2 more bad results is all he's got left, and I think Pochettino's waiting in the wings for this job.
I think he's likely to be given more than 2 games. Being an ex-Man United legend, he's given more time than some of the previous managers they've had, such as Moyes and Van Gaal and Mourinho. They were quicker to be sacked than I think Ole will be. But I think if they're to do anything this season, they're going to have to do it before Christmas. They're going to have to remove them quickly, because before they know it, they're going to be a long way off. Not just the top, like Liverpool, in winning the league. They're going to be a long way off Europe. Maybe even a long way off mid-table if they don't pick it up very soon, because teams are already starting to stretch their legs and starting to get away. Like Liverpool, I think, are already 9 points ahead of them.
Yeah, it's the worst start that Man United have made to a Premier League campaign since David Moyes was manager. And I think that, says everything. He was the first manager that came in after Ferguson and, did pretty poorly in comparison to what Ferguson managed to achieve. And now Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, it's been left with the same results, and 2 games seems fair to me. But like you said, a Man United legend, he's likely to get till at least Christmas, in my opinion. And that might be to the detriment of Manchester United, because they could be well out of the top 10 by then, like you said. So Yeah, I wouldn't want to be a Man United fan right now, that's for sure. And that's probably a good time to bring in our first question of the week, actually, from Adam, who has asked the question, what player in their right mind looks at Manchester United and thinks they want to join that team? Yeah, at the moment, you've got to think, who in January is going to be thinking, oh yeah, I'll go to United. That'll be a good move for my career. Because you look at the players they've signed recently, and they've not hit the ground running like you would have thought they would. Van der Beek's not even made it into the starting 11 yet, and he was almost the marquee signing of the summer. And it's just a shadow of the former team that we used to know. And yeah, if I was a professional player playing well in Europe or for one of the lesser clubs, and Man United came in for me, I probably would think twice about joining them at the moment.
Very obviously a Liverpool fan there, Adam, but I just don't see why you'd go to Man United, especially whilst, like we were just saying about Ollie being there. I think for Man United to be a draw for players in January, they're going to need to, one, sack Ollie, two, bring in a manager of clout and quality, and a manager who players know they're going to play from the start. So if they get picked, they're going to get into that team, and a manager who has a style and has a system, and they know where they're going to fit into. Because at the moment, we said it at the start, we weren't sure where Van der Beek was going to fit into that team, and we've been proven right. We have no idea even now where he fits into that side, and I don't think Ollie does. Very strange. I think everyone thought they needed a centre back. They didn't go out and get a centre back. I personally wouldn't go to Manchester United now, but I think one of the big things for a player going to Manchester United, it will always be the case, is one, big wages, big reputation, and I think most players at that level have a bit of arrogance. They have an ego, and they could probably believe that getting signed to Manchester United, they might be that player which turns them around, and then therefore becoming a legend. Still one of the biggest clubs in the world. No matter how badly they're playing, they are still got a huge fan base. And if you're the player who comes in and turns them around and is that pivotal player, you will be known all around the world. You'll be worth a fortune, and your ego will go even further through the roof.
All I will say is that when Ferguson left and they brought Moyes in, I'm sure the Man United fans, they did understand that it's going to take time to rebuild and challenge for the Premier League, challenge for the Champions League. But after these years, they seem to have got worse. So if I was a Man United fan, I'd be livid with what's happened to become progressively worse after each season. They need to get rid of some of the players who I think have poor attitude. Pogba being the main issue. I think they would benefit from getting rid of him. He's a great player, but I don't think he wants to be with Manchester United. I don't know what you think, but I feel he's not 100% in it.
Yeah, he's already come out and said that he doesn't see his future at Manchester United, that he wants to be at Real Madrid. He's made that very publicly known. So I guess in January, maybe Poch is there and he doesn't see Pogba's value in the team. And, he ships him off to Madrid. And I think that would be a great move for both sides, really. Real Madrid could do with someone of that caliber in their team. And that opens up a huge amount of wages and also transfer budget for Manchester United to then go and, rebuild almost, because I think at this point they just need to start over, get rid of all of the assets that are taking up the larger majority of their wages and start over, because, minus one or two players like Rashford, Greenwood, I guess you could ask you, and Bruno Fernandes, I don't think there's anyone there worth keeping.
The biggest thing going on for Man United is they need some players in there with some drive and desire to be in that side, because at the moment I just don't see it.
Right, so we'll go on to our second question of the episode, which is from Theo. Who has been the most overrated signing so far this season? Obviously, it's pretty early days in the Premier League, only 7 games in for every team. It's difficult to maybe pick out one player who's been worse than anyone else. What do you guys think? Is there anyone that stands out for you as a flop so far?
Donny van der Beek. If he carries on stuck on the bench, not getting a lot of play time, and he ends up moving somewhere else outside of the Premier League at the end of the season, or I don't think he'll go at the end of the season, but it depends how often he plays. But if things carry on as they are right now, he's definitely the flop season.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. He's the obvious example of what you stated, Alex, but with the right manager, he still might come good for Manchester United. I think they just need to find the balance. They need to find a way of getting that side to work properly. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. That could be a while, so you could be right. He could be a flop. It is early doors, so it's quite difficult to predict. Obviously, at Southampton, we bought an expensive centre back who so far hasn't been fit. Fingers crossed that won't become a flop. Fingers crossed he'll work his way into the side and become a talismanic centre back for us, very much like Van Dijk was in the back of the day. I think he still has time to adapt and could come good. I think it's a difficult one, that.
Yeah, for me, actually, it's probably a bit of a out there one. But from what I've seen so far, Ruben Diaz, Manchester City's £60 million centre back, doesn't look like a massive improvement on what they've got already. They've spent massively on him. I guess he was supposed to be their marquee signing of the summer, but so far he doesn't offer anything different from the centre backs they've had in the past, in my opinion. Is he better than John Stones? Probably not. Is he better than Otamendi? Probably not. I don't really see the value in that transfer. And if anything, I think Nathan Ake was a much better signing at centre back than Diaz. So yeah, that's my answer to that question. He may well prove me wrong. He may well become a great Premier League centre back, but right now I just can't see it.
Oh, you've just sparked a couple of names into my mind, actually. So I'd say Rodrigo at Leeds hasn't performed quite to the standard I was expecting, not for the amount of money they spent on him. And then the other one is Fabio Silva. He's come in for a lot of money. Obviously, he's very young, and it's going to take him time to adapt and find his way into that side. So he could be a few months off actually and becoming an incredible player for them. But at the moment, it's a lot of money spent for a player who sits on the bench and plays 5 to 10 minutes a game.
Yeah, more than a couple of players there to answer that question. Right, finally, a question from Rory again this week. We have, do you think the dominance of the Big Six could weaken in the coming seasons? And are other teams below those top 6 teams starting to close the gap? Yeah, it's a good question, especially this season because results have been so sporadic, so unpredictable. Maybe it's that year where, a couple of the established Big Six teams don't actually finish in the Champions League spots. We could well see it. Whether we will or not, I guess the season's pretty young at this point. So the teams who are established, the Arsenals, the Manchester Uniteds might pick up form and end up being those teams. But yeah, actually, I kind of can see it happening this season. I think it may well go against the mould that we've seen the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, I definitely think that dominance is starting to come to an end. I think even last season we saw with Leicester, with Wolves, and at times Sheffield United, we've seen that teams are adapting the way they play. More and more now we have styles of football which are awkward for the big teams to play against. Like, gone are the days where teams are just going to sit back and just soak up all the pressure and hope to only get a 0-0 draw and maybe sneak a 1-0 out of a game. You've got teams like Wolves who will now go to a team like City and go at them. You'll have Traore just running at them. You have other teams which they've learned how to battle against these big sides, and I think that style of football which teams are bringing to the fore is making it a much tighter league. I think we have high pressing teams like Southampton now who are much more of a challenge for any team on their day. And the other thing is, I think the money. I think we're starting to see even the smaller clubs being able to spend quite a lot. Again, example, Wolves, they've spent a huge amount. Leeds, they've come up and they've spent a lot of money. Villa last season when they came up spent a lot of money and they spent quite a bit again this season. There's a lot more teams around the Premier League now which have financial clout. And I think that is also narrowing the gap.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that, Angus, about the foreign investment coming into the Premier League. From an off-the-pitch perspective, you can bring in exciting young players and, again, exciting young coaches as well, or established coaches who have won a lot abroad. And yeah, definitely the gap is closing. With the current season, you also have to take into account the no fans being allowed in the stadiums and how that's leading to some surprise results, which may kick on with teams getting surprise results, higher up position in the league, possible European football. That will only make them a more attractive team to spend money for the owners.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most unpredictable seasons in Premier League history, in my opinion. It's like a cocktail of, different scenarios which have all happened at the same time. Football being played behind closed doors. Clubs coming into their Premier League with lots of money now, starting to compete with the bigger teams in terms of transfer spend. And, all in all, it's going to make for a really entertaining season. And I think this might be the one where we see, a lot of changeover between the top 6 clubs. I can't see it being the same 6 clubs we've seen up there for the last 4 or 5 seasons. So fingers crossed we get a bit of diversity at the top. I think it would be great to see someone else challenge for the title, just like Leicester did. Yeah, hopefully this isn't just to do with the fans. And next season, if fans are allowed back into stadiums, we see a resumption of what we've had this season, because I think that would be great for the Premier League, both as a spectacle and a competition. Okay, questions answered. It's time for the predictions for the upcoming game week in the Premier League. Starting on Friday with Brighton versus Burnley. Again, it's one of those Friday night games which I'm not sure too many people are going to tune in to watch. But it's a big game for both teams, more so for Burnley at this point because they're winless still. Brighton, it will be interesting to see if Maupay's back in the team, whether that's a permanent problem or whether he goes straight back into their starting lineup. But for me, I think Brighton probably still have a bit too much for Burnley. Although credit to Burnley, they probably have improved in recent weeks. My prediction is very much on the assumption that Maupay's not going to be in their squad again. And so that might affect Brighton. So I'm actually going to go for a 1-0 draw in this one.
Yeah, I can't see this being much of a goal fest either. I think Brighton are going to have just a little bit too much for Burnley. Burnley haven't really shown anything this season so far. And I'm going to go for 1-0 Burnley win. Brighton win.
I think 2 average attacks will cancel each other out. I think it'll be 0-0.
And interestingly, that's the same result as Peter predicted this week, who's sadly not with us.
He sounded like he had died for a second, but it's just his birthday. He'll be back next week.
I was going to say he's ill, but he's actually not.
Right, moving on to the second game on Friday night, and it's Southampton versus Newcastle. Southampton knowing that a win will take them top of the Premier League if they do get the 3 points against Newcastle. Yeah, it's a really big game for Southampton, really. I think it's the first time we can potentially top the league since like the 1980s, even if it will be just for probably a matter of 12 or 16 hours. Nevertheless, I'm sure we'll all enjoy it if it happens. And yeah, I've got to be optimistic for this one. I've got to say that we're going to get the win. Just for that moment to see Southampton at the top of the league, it'd be great. So I'm just going to go for a 2-1 win.
Yeah, I'm getting strangely nervous about this game. I think it's the fact that we could potentially go top of the league. I know, obviously, it's not going to be where we're going to end the season. I think we should have enough to win this match. I'm going to go with 2-1 to the Saints.
Yeah, I'm going to back Southampton to continue their good form with a 2-0 win.
And Peter this week predicted 2-2 in the Saints-Newcastle game.
Yeah, he just doesn't want to see Southampton top the league.
No, that upsets them. Just because we're a bigger, better team than West Ham.
Yeah, we can get all the West Ham jargs in while he's not here. So, yeah, never going to top the league, I don't think, West Ham. But, Right, moving on, we have Everton, Man United. And this has potential to be a really important game for both teams. Everton need to pick up some form after 2 defeats in a row. And then Manchester United haven't scored for 2 games in a row. So something's got to give in this one. I think Everton are welcoming back James Rodriguez potentially in this game. I think Richarlison still has a match ban. So, yeah, I guess, I don't know, the form suggests that Everton should be the stronger team in this one. And it's difficult to look past them, to be honest. I think they'll be up for this game. They always have been in the past. There's a bit of a rivalry there, not really sure why, but they don't seem to like each other too much, these 2 teams. So, yeah, I'm going to go for an Everton win, actually. I'm going to go for a narrow one, 1-0.
Yeah, I struggled on this one. I really struggled to know which way it's going to go. I've kind of played it safe and gone with a 1-1 draw. I don't think either team are in the form which it can be. I think Everton especially have dropped off with the red card of Richarlison, and we don't know if James Rodriguez will be back in time. So I'm just going with a 1-1 draw.
I think the pressure on Solskjaer and the Manchester United team could kick them into action. So I'm going to back them for a 1-0 win.
And then Peter has gone for a 2-0 Everton win. So, yeah, interesting. That could go either way, I think, this game. And like most of our predictions have been very one way or the other. So it could be an interesting game. Next up, it's Crystal Palace Leeds. Crystal Palace obviously play a style of football which isn't fun to watch, especially when they're at home. They tend to go all out for a goal early doors. And then if they do get that goal, then they tend to sit back and let teams come onto them. Against Leeds, I don't think that's going to work particularly well. Leeds will be fighting for the ball from the first minute, and I can't really see how Crystal Palace are going to deal with the threat that they provide. So I'm actually going to go with quite a convincing Leeds win here, so 3-1.
Yeah, I'm thinking down similar lines to you. I don't even see where Palace are going to manage to get a goal against Leeds, I don't think. I think it's going to be relatively comfortable for Leeds. The possession stats, I'm expecting high 70s, maybe even 80%. I think they're going to dominate the ball all game. Palace are going to try and hit them on the break, but we've seen the work effort of the Leeds side and how much they're willing to try and really work hard. And I just don't see Palace don't have that striker up top to really threaten that side. They're just not going to have enough, and I think it's going to come to 2-0 Leeds.
I think Leeds will want to put their last result behind them. I'm backing them for a 2-1 win.
And Peter this week is gone with, in a similar vein to Matt, with a 3-1 win to Leeds. So all of us thinking that Palace don't really stand a chance. So inevitably what's going to happen now is a solid 2-0 Palace win. Next in the week is Chelsea against Sheffield United. So I just can't see anything but a comfortable Chelsea win. I think Sheffield United, just having watched the City game, they just weren't willing to attack, put the ball into the box, and Chelsea will just be comfortable. And they have now got the attacking players and the creativity to break down that Sheffield United team. So I'm going to go with a comfortable 2-0 win.
Yeah, I'm thinking along the same lines as you. Chelsea have looked very good attacking-wise. They've now got that stability at the back as well. I think it's 4 clean sheets in a row in all competitions. I can see them making it 5, actually. Sheffield United obviously haven't looked great in front of goal. And yeah, I'm going to go that they're not going to score in this game either. So 3-0 Chelsea.
Chelsea will win this comfortably. I agree with all your points. I think Sheffield United must have one of the poorer attacks in the league. I'm going to go for a 3-0 Chelsea win.
And again, another clean sweep of results in terms of predictions. Peter's gone for 4-0 this week. Loving his 4-0s this week. So 4-0 Chelsea against Sheffield United. Next up, we have Peter's team. West Ham against Fulham. A little bit of a London derby. And I've personally gone for a tight West Ham win. I think they're going to win 2-1. If Antonio is still out, they may struggle to break them down at times, but I think they'll have enough to get across the line and get the win.
Yeah, I agree. West Ham obviously were unlucky to get that loss at Liverpool in the end. And Fulham obviously very improved in their win against West Brom. So I don't think it's going to be like the convincing win that probably West Ham fans were expecting a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you actually, Angus. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win for West Ham.
I think it will be a close match. I'm going to say it's going to be 1-1. Hopefully Ben Rama will get his full Premier League debut. You can't count the 2 minutes against Liverpool. If Ben Rama does play, then I could possibly see West Ham winning this. But as it stands, I'm going to go with a 1-1.
I love how much Ben Rama is basically a god in your eyes.
He is.
Interestingly, Peter, being the West Ham fan, slightly deluded, thinking West Ham are going to win 4-0, which is probably also going to bite me in the ass, that one. Next up, we have West Brom against Spurs. So one of the worst teams in the league against one of the best attacks in the league. I personally could only see a huge result. 4-0 for Spurs. Yes, I predicted 4-0 last week, but I think, yet again, I think Spurs are going to be, this time they're going to be far too good for a team which, if they conceded 2 against Fulham, I just can't see how they're going to stand a chance against Bale, Kane and Son. And I think Bale will start this week.
Yeah, West Brom really weren't good against Fulham, and that must be worrying for them and their fans. But Tottenham, on the other hand, got a narrow win against Brighton, and I think that was probably just like a snippet of what they're capable of. So they will improve this week, Tottenham. I don't think it'll be comfortable. It'll be kind of similar to their performance at Burnley, in my opinion. I think they'll probably do one better than what they did at Burnley and get a 2-0 win.
This will be a comfortable win for Spurs. I'm going to go with a 4-0 win. I think West Brom are one of the sure candidates to go down this season. They're very poor. I can see Fulham improving as the season goes on, but West Brom I just think are awful and they'll be going down. I think that will reflect in most of the results. 4-0 Spurs.
And Peter's gone with a 3-1 win too, making it a clean sweep of Tottenham wins for that game. Yeah, very difficult to look past that. Next up is Leicester versus Wolves, probably the most tightly contested game of the game week, in my opinion. 2 teams that have started the season really, really well. And on paper, they're really well matched all over the pitch. It's got the potential probably to be the best game of the weekend, in my opinion. I think these 2 teams just have really good firepower and provide good attacking football. So I'm actually going to go for a 2-2 draw in this game.
Yeah, hopefully they're not going to negate each other. Like you said, they've got 2 brilliant attacks, and I'm going to go with a Wolves win. I know Leicester obviously coming back from a very decent win against Leeds, but I think Wolves have just started to really hit form. I just think they might be the stronger side.
I actually think Leicester will win this 2-1. I think they're just very clinical going forward. It could be more goals, but no, I'll stick 2-1.
And Peter's gone with 3-2. So along the same lines as you, Alex, apart from he thinks there might be more goals in the game. The only thing holding back for me is the amount of injuries Leicester have. The penultimate game of the weekend, we have the biggest game on paper, I'd say, the Man City versus Liverpool. The two teams you'd expect to be battling it out at the end of the season to become champions. This is a huge game early on in the season. And I'm going to go with a Liverpool 2-1 away win. I think City haven't found form. Yes, Liverpool haven't really either, but at times they look better going forward, and I think those goals will be enough to just get them over the line.
Yeah, I think Liverpool have showed a bit more than Manchester City so far this season, especially attacking-wise. Maybe not in the Premier League, but in the Champions League, they've looked unstoppable, scoring goals left, right and centre. No matter how rebuilt their defence is, they look very, very good. And as we speak, they're currently beating Atalanta 5-0. So you would think that firepower would probably see them over the line against Manchester City, but something tells me it's not going to be that easy. And Pep will probably adjust things tactically to come out of this game with at least a point. So I'm going to go with a 1-1.
Probably the fixture of the week. And I'm sorry to say this because no one wants to watch this on a Sunday afternoon, but I honestly think it's going to be a 0-0 ball draw.
We have Peter going with a 2-1 Man City win. And then on to our final game, Arsenal against Aston Villa. I have this week gone with a 2-1 win to Arsenal.
Yeah, I think Arsenal are the better side in this matchup. They got the good win against Manchester United last week, probably on a bit of a high after that. And Villa obviously conceded 4 goals against Southampton. And I think Arsenal probably offer a bit more in attack than Southampton if Aubameyang's on form. So yeah, I'm going to go Arsenal 3-1, but I'm very prepared to be wrong on that because they've looked less than inspiring on their day.
I actually think this game was quite tough to call. And that's weird because of how poor Aston Villa have been in the last couple of games. But knowing Dean Smith, I think he can improve Villa's defence and he can get a good performance out of this team against the stronger teams in the Premier League. I think it'll actually be 1-0 Villa.
And to round off our predictions for the weekend, Peter's gone with a 2-2. In terms of a recap on the points we had last weekend, we had Peter with the most points. He got 11, bringing his total up to 46. Matt had 5, bringing up his total to 41. And I had 9, so still leading the way on 50 points. Matt was very, very cocky last weekend and has proven to be all types of wrong, interestingly enough.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to hype myself up quite as much as that this week. Not quite sure what happened last week. I think maybe I was a bit mind over matter. Yeah, I've definitely looked at my predictions a couple of times today and refined them a little bit. So I'm thinking I might do better this week, but providing I beat Peter's total and West Ham don't win 4-0, I'll be quite happy.
Yeah, nobody wants West Ham to win 4-0.
And on that note, that brings an end to another episode of the 3PL podcast. A massive thank you to everyone who supported and continued to listen to our podcast every week. We really appreciate it. We'll be back again next week with another summary of all the weekend's games and then looking ahead to the ones the weekend after. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter, YouTube and Instagram using @3PL podcast. And if you do have any questions for us that you want us to answer in the next episode, just make sure you drop them on all of our social medias and we'll do our best to answer them. And yeah, we'll catch you next week.